Welcome back. I'm Dr. Cheek and I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about what does the healing, growth, and progress process look like and what it may or may not feel like. Now, each of us are different. We may have our own different experiences, but I've found that there are some commonalities when it relates to what it feels like to go through that healing process. And this is just some of those commonalities. That first one is when you are in or when you are aware that that healing and that growth process has begun or has reached a certain point, what you'll start to notice is that your emotional reaction or your emotional response to certain things are not the same. And what this looks like is that when we experience difficult or uncomfortable life situations, whether it be past traumas, whether it be relationship loss, job loss, or the death of a loved one, we experience an influx of negative emotions, whether that's anger, frustration, sadness, depression, loneliness, isolation. We feel a whole host of negative emotions. Now, what you'll notice is that when you are in the healing process, when you have reached some level of growth and healing and progress, as it relates to those situations, your emotional reactivity to those situations are different. You no longer have those same intense negative emotions. So let's take, for example, if you experience the loss of a loved one. Now, when you're approached with certain things like photos or images or reminders of them, instead of you having that overwhelming feeling of sadness or that overwhelming feeling of anger that you no longer have this person present in your life, you may feel an overwhelming sense of joy that you're able to know this person. You may start to recall all of the wonderful times you all had together, and you're able to see those without those negative emotions overshadowing those happier times you had with that person. You're able to appreciate the time that you were able to spend with them and not focus on the time you've lost with them since their passing. That tends to be an indicator that you are in the healing process and that you've made some progress towards growth in that area. Another example is in relationship loss, whether the breakup or disconnection was initiated by you or someone else, there is still some level of anger or frustration that may be surrounding that relationship dynamic. And what you may start to notice that when you are in the healing process, when there is growth, is that that person or that relationship is not the last thing you think about at night, and it's not the first thing you think about when you wake up. They're not the first person that's on your mind. And when something or someone reminds you of either that person you lost, whether it was a relationship or a death, you're not upset. You're not sad. You're able to look at the relationship dynamics and say, maybe that wasn't the healthiest relationship for me. There were some good qualities about that person and there were some bad qualities about that person. Either way, the relationship didn't last, and we both hopefully can move on to healthier relationships. And you're able to look at the death of that loved one and say, I appreciate the time that I was able to get to spend with them, but now I get to take with me the memories that we share. So when we are in a place where we start to understand that we're healing from certain situations, it kind of happens all of a sudden. You may go to sleep one day and not notice that you're no longer thinking about this person or the situation. You may wake up one day and not notice that that's not the first thing on your mind. But at some point it happens, and it feels like sometimes it happens overnight. You go to sleep and you say to yourself when you wake up, I'm not thinking about them. I wasn't thinking about them last night. I'm not thinking about them this morning. And it's such a sense of relief that comes from that. And that relief brings me to my next point. And that next point is when we are in that healing journey and that growth journey, that process, we start to feel a sense of relief that could be physical, mental, or emotional. It feels like when we're able to heal, or when we've reached a point in that healing process, it can feel like a physical weight has been lifted off of your shoulders. It feels like you're no longer carrying the burdens or the pain that came from that situation. Whatever past situation that is, you're able to feel that release and feel that relief from not having to carry on the thoughts about that situation, the pain that may have come from that situation, the things that cause you to feel this mental distress or emotional distress. Those things feel lifted. They feel carried away and they're no longer there. That's what it feels like to feel healed and to feel like you're healing and making progress progress and growth from past situations. You're able to feel this overwhelming relief of this weight just being lifted off of your shoulders. You don't feel like you have to carry the pain of that situation any longer. You don't have to carry the pain or the thoughts about that situation any longer. You don't have to carry the fear of remembering that situation any longer. You're able to understand that I may remember the situation, but those emotions that came initially with me remembering that situation are just not there anymore. And that feels like such a relief. And lastly, what you may start to understand in this process of healing, growth, and progress is that there are going to be setbacks. There are going to be regressions. There are going to be times where you revert to your old way of being and your old way of dealing with difficult situations. So an example is you may one day have a memory of someone that you lost, a loved one that has passed away. You may feel that overwhelming sense of sadness, and it could be on one of those anniversaries. So anniversaries are birthdays, special days that the two of you shared together, the day that they passed away. It could be any of those things that remind you of that loved one that you lost, and that emotion may feel like overwhelming sadness. Another example of what feels like a setback and a regression to previous behaviors is you may feel like you're over a relationship and the loss of a relationship, and something happens that reminds you of the person you used to be with. And your instinct in that moment is to reach out. Your instinct in that moment is to try to figure out how you could have made the relationship work. And in those moments, this is what's considered or what can be seen as a setback or a regression to previous behaviors or previous emotions that you felt like you had already dealt with. And what a regression and a setback is not, a regression and a setback is not saying that you have not grown. It's not saying that you have not progressed past the point of where you were before. Is saying that you are very human and having an emotional reaction to something that had an impact on you emotionally. And setbacks do not take you back to the very beginning of this healing journey. Neither does it erase all of the work that you've done into this point. A setback is exactly that. It's something that sets you back for a moment, but you're able to recover from it and move forward. And what this may look like in a trauma response or when we've had past traumas is a setback can look like being triggered by something new in your environment that you were not aware of before. So it could be a smell, it could be a sound that you haven't heard before, and it causes you to respond emotionally in a way that feels very outside of who you are as a person, and the emotional reaction feels very disproportionate to what was happening in the environment. And you may start to ask yourself, like, what was happening in that moment that caused me to respond in that way? This is not who I am. This is not how I normally respond to this sound or this smell or this touch. So why did I respond like that? And the simple act of being able to take a step back and question what was happening for you in that moment is the demonstration of the growth and the progress and the healing that you have made. Because in that moment, what you learn and what you realize is that there are things in the environment that has the ability to bring you back to some really hard times in your life. But what you don't do is you don't give away your accountability in that moment and say, I get to behave this way because of what I've gone through. You take your accountability back and you say, this is why I responded that way. This is where that was coming from. And now I know I need to prepare or be able to deal with that as well. But the fact that you're able to take a step back and ask yourself what led to those behaviors is a true indication of growth and healing and progress in this mental health journey. So what I hope you take from today is the healing, growth, and progress mental health journey. It's not always the same for everyone, but there are some commonalities. We all in this healing process, once we get to a certain point, may feel less emotionally reactive to reminders of past negative experiences. We may start to feel a sense of relief that could be emotional, physical, or mental as it relates to having memories or thoughts or reminders of those past negative experiences or past hurtful or harmful experiences. And we may also understand and learn to accept that there are going to be times in our lives where we revert back to previous behaviors or previous behavior responses to those situations. And that does not mean mean we've erased everything we've done up until this point. That means we can continue to grow as long as we try to learn from our experiences and what we've previously gone through. Then that lets us know that we are on the right track towards growth and healing. And that is a continuous process. And there is no time frame on this. We sometimes get caught up in this idea that we should be in this place within 2 months or within 6 months or within sometimes 2 years. Healing takes time. And that time is determined by the emotional toll, the mental toll, and the physical toll that particular situation had on you at that time. So again, I hope you've learned something from today. As always, please feel free to jot down any questions or concerns you have below. I thank you for taking the time to listen, and I will be seeing you again very soon. Thank you.